In the far future, humanity had spread across the stars. Earth was now both a memory and a symbol. For years, humans were treated as less important by the Galactic Council, a group of powerful alien species who thought they were better than everyone else. Among those struggling to survive was Daniel Hayes, a former pilot turned mechanic. He lived on a remote human colony at the edge of known space. His life was quiet, filled with fixing broken machines and trying to forget the past. But everything changed when his younger sister, Rachel Monroe, disappeared. Rachel had always been passionate about justice. She often joined protests against the Council's unfair rules. High taxes, forced labor, and constant discrimination had pushed many humans to speak out. One day, Rachel went to a rally near the capital city of their colony. She never came back. At first, Daniel thought she might have gone into hiding or decided to leave without telling him. But as days turned into weeks, he grew worried. Then, rumors started spreading about others who had vanished after attending similar protests. Determined to find answers, Daniel began investigating. He reached out to old friends from his days in the military, asking if they had heard anything unusual. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle started coming together. Reports surfaced of humans being taken away by Council enforcers late at night. No one knew where they were being taken or why. The more Daniel dug, the angrier he became. It wasn't just Rachel. It was hundreds of people, maybe even thousands. One evening, while searching through old records in a dusty data hub, Daniel met someone unexpected. Her name was Elena Vega, a journalist known for uncovering secrets that others wanted to keep buried. She had been following the same trail as Daniel, but from a different angle. When they realized they were working toward the same goal, they decided to team up. Elena's knowledge of the Council's inner workings complemented Daniel's determination and resourcefulness. Together, they discovered something shocking. Hidden deep within encrypted files was evidence of secret experiments. The Council had been abducting humans and using them as test subjects for weapons designed to control entire populations. These weapons weren't meant for aliens. They were specifically created to target humans. The revelation made Daniel's blood boil. He couldn't let this continue. Elena suggested taking the evidence public, but Daniel knew it wouldn't be enough. The Council controlled the media, and any attempt to expose the truth would likely be silenced before it gained traction. They needed proof so undeniable that not even the Council could deny it. That's when Daniel came up with a risky plan. Infiltrate a Council-controlled station rumored to house these labs. If they could get inside and document what was happening, they might finally have leverage. To pull off such a dangerous mission, they needed help. Daniel contacted Marcus Kane, an old friend and former soldier who had left the military after losing faith in the system. Marcus agreed to join them, bringing along Sophia Liu, a brilliant engineer skilled in modifying outdated technology. With their combined skills, the group set out to prepare for the infiltration. As they worked, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Rachel from his mind. Was she still alive? Had she suffered like the others? The questions haunted him, but they also fueled his resolve. This wasn't just about finding his sister anymore. It was about standing up for every human who had been mistreated, abused, and forgotten. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a sense of purpose. Little did he know, his actions were about to spark a movement that would change the galaxy forever. With their plan in motion, Daniel, Elena, Marcus, and Sophia began preparing for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The Council-controlled station was heavily guarded, with layers of security designed to keep intruders out. Knowing they couldn't storm it directly, the group decided to pose as traders delivering supplies. Sophia worked tirelessly to modify their ship, disguising it as an old cargo vessel while secretly equipping it with hidden compartments for weapons and recording devices. Elena took charge of creating fake identification papers. She spent hours studying the Council's bureaucratic systems, ensuring every detail matched what the guards would expect. Meanwhile, Marcus trained the team on how to act if questioned. "Stay calm," he reminded them. "One wrong move, and we're done. Daniel listened carefully, his mind racing with thoughts of Rachel and the others trapped inside the station. He knew failure wasn't an option. The journey to the station was tense. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. When they finally arrived, the sight of the massive structure looming ahead filled them with both awe and dread. It was a cold, metallic fortress floating in the void of space, its surface dotted with weapon turrets and surveillance drones. As they approached, a council officer aboard the station hailed them over the comm system. "This is Station Gamma 7. State your business." The voice crackled through the speakers. Elena stepped forward, her tone confident but not overly eager. "Supply delivery from Outpost Delta. Routine shipment of parts and rations." After a brief pause, the officer replied, "Docking Bay 12C, follow the markers." Sophia guided the ship toward the designated bay, her hand steady despite the pressure. Once docked, the team put on their disguises and prepared to disembark. Marcus carried a crate filled with tools, while Daniel wheeled another supposedly packed with food supplies. Elena stayed close, ready to smooth over any suspicion with her quick thinking. Sophia remained on the ship, monitoring their progress through hidden cameras embedded in their gear. Inside the station, the air felt sterile and unwelcoming. Bright lights illuminated narrow corridors, lined with doors marked with cryptic symbols. Council enforcers patrolled the halls, their armored suits making them look more like machines than living beings. The team moved cautiously, sticking to their cover story. At one point, a guard stopped them, eyeing the crates suspiciously. "What's in here?" he asked, pointing at Daniel's load. "Just standard rations," Daniel replied, keeping his voice steady. "You can check if you want." The guard hesitated, then waved them through. "Keep moving." They exhaled silently, relieved but aware that every step brought them closer to danger. Using Elena's map of the station, they located a restricted area rumored to house the labs. Getting there required bypassing multiple checkpoints, which Sophia managed remotely using her hacking skills. Finally, they reached a heavy door labeled "Authorized Personnel Only." Marcus used a small device to disable the lock, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, they found rows of glass chambers filled with unconscious humans. Tubes connected their bodies to machines that monitored vital signs. Some appeared frail, their faces pale and lifeless. Others twitched involuntarily, as if caught in a nightmare. Daniel clenched his fists, anger surging through him. Among the captives, he spotted someone familiar, Rachel. She lay motionless, her hair matted and her skin ghostly white. Elena quickly activated a recording device, capturing everything. They couldn't free the prisoners without alerting the entire station, but they could gather evidence. As they filmed, a sudden alarm blared, startling them. Someone had discovered their intrusion. "We need to go. Now," Marcus shouted. Daniel hesitated, staring at Rachel. Leaving her behind felt unbearable, but he knew they had no choice. If they were caught, the evidence would be lost, and the truth would die with them. Reluctantly, he turned away, vowing to return for her. The team raced back to the docking bay, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding detection. By the time they reached the ship, their hearts were pounding. Sophia wasted no time launching into space, the station shrinking behind them. Though shaken, they had succeeded. They had proof of the Council's crimes, and humanity's fury was about to be unleashed. Back on their ship, the team gathered in the cramped meeting room to review the footage they had captured. The images were horrifying. Rows of humans trapped in glass chambers, hooked up to machines that drained their strength and tested their limits. Elena uploaded the recordings to secure storage, ensuring multiple copies existed in case something happened to the original files. Daniel stared at the screen, his jaw tight with anger. Seeing Rachel like that had torn him apart, but he forced himself to focus. They had evidence now, undeniable proof of the Council's crimes. Word of their success spread quickly among human colonies. People who had long suffered under the Council's rule began to rise up. Protests erupted on dozens of planets, with crowds chanting for justice and freedom. The resistance gained new members almost daily, many of them eager to fight back against their oppressors. Marcus trained the recruits, teaching them how to handle weapons and plan strategic attacks. Sophia worked tirelessly to upgrade their ships and equipment, knowing they would need every advantage they could get. But not everyone in the growing movement could be trusted. During a routine supply run to a remote outpost, Daniel noticed something strange. One of their newer members, Ethan Cole, seemed unusually nervous. Ethan was young, barely out of his teens, and had joined the resistance just weeks earlier. At first, he had appeared passionate about the cause, but now his behavior raised red flags. When questioned, Ethan avoided eye contact and gave vague answers about where he had been during the mission. Before Daniel could confront him, disaster struck. While delivering supplies to another colony, the team walked into an ambush. Council enforcers appeared out of nowhere, firing energy blasts that tore through their defenses. The attack was brutal and unexpected. Several resistance fighters were killed, and their ship sustained heavy damage. Only quick thinking and sheer luck allowed Daniel and the others to escape. Back aboard their main vessel, tensions ran high. Everyone wanted answers. How had the Council known where to find them? Someone had betrayed them, and suspicion fell heavily on Ethan. Confronted by Daniel and Marcus, the young man broke down, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't want to do it," Ethan cried. "They have my family. My little sister. She's only 10. They said they'd kill her if I didn't help them." The room fell silent. No one spoke as Ethan recounted how Council agents had threatened his loved ones, forcing him to feed information back to them. Daniel felt a mix of fury and pity. He understood what it meant to care for family, but betrayal was still betrayal. "We can't trust you anymore," Marcus growled, stepping forward. "Wait," Daniel interrupted, holding up a hand. "If the Council thinks Ethan is still working for them, maybe we can use that to our advantage." Elena nodded slowly, catching on to his idea. He could feed them false information, mislead them while we prepare our next move. It was a risky plan, but they didn't have many options. After a tense discussion, the team agreed to let Ethan stay, but under strict supervision. He would report fake updates to the Council, buying the resistance time to regroup and strengthen their forces. For his part, Ethan seemed genuinely remorseful, vowing to make amends for his mistake. The incident left a bitter taste in everyone's mouths. Trust was fragile, and the stakes were higher than ever. But Daniel reminded himself why they were fighting, not just for revenge, but for a future where no one would have to choose between their family and their principles. As the ship sailed through the endless void of space, the weight of their mission settled heavily on their shoulders. Humanity's fury burned brighter than ever, but so did the Council's determination to crush it. The battle ahead would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As the resistance regrouped, Sophia revealed a project she had been working on in secret. It was a prototype weapon unlike anything they had seen before. She called it Aegis, a device capable of disabling entire fleets without causing loss of life. The weapon harnessed energy from collapsing stars, creating a pulse that disrupted advanced technology. While it wasn't perfect, its power source was unstable and unpredictable. It had the potential to level the playing field against the Council's superior forces. Daniel listened intently as Sophia explained how Aegis worked. "It won't kill anyone," she said firmly, "but it will shut down their ships, leaving them vulnerable. That's our chance to strike." Marcus frowned, his gruff voice cutting through the room. "What happens if it goes wrong? What if it hurts innocent people?" Sophia hesitated but didn't back down. "I've run simulations. The risk is low, but yes, there's always a chance something could go wrong. We don't have many options left, though. If we want to stand a chance against the Council, we need this." Elena agreed, her tone calm but resolute. "We can't keep fighting them ship by ship. They outnumber us, outgun us, and outmaneuver us at every turn. Aegis might be our only hope." After a long silence, Daniel nodded. Let's do it. But we test it first. Somewhere safe, far away from civilians. The team set course for an uncharted region of space near a dying star. The journey was perilous, with bursts of radiation threatening to damage their ship at every turn. Along the way, they encountered scavenger ships piloted by ruthless aliens who preyed on travelers. Marcus took charge during one such encounter, using clever tactics to scare off the scavengers without firing a shot. When they finally reached the testing site, the environment was harsh and unforgiving. The air around the star crackled with energy, making communication difficult and navigation treacherous. Despite these challenges, Sophia remained focused, setting up Aegis on the surface of a nearby asteroid. She worked tirelessly, her hands steady even as sweat dripped down her face. The rest of the team stayed aboard the ship, monitoring the situation from a safe distance. Daniel watched anxiously as Sophia activated the device. At first, nothing happened. Then, a massive pulse of energy erupted from the asteroid, rippling outward like a shockwave. Nearby debris disintegrated instantly, and several old satellites orbiting the star went dark. "It works," Elena whispered, her voice filled with awe. But the celebration was short-lived. As the energy dissipated, Sophia collapsed, overwhelmed by exposure to the intense radiation. Daniel and Marcus rushed to bring her back to the ship, where they stabilized her condition. Though weakened, Sophia insisted she would recover in time. "We did it," she said weakly, managing a small smile. "Now you just have to use it wisely." With Aegis proven effective, the team began planning their next move. The weapon gave them hope, but it also brought new risks. If the Council learned about it, they would stop at nothing to destroy it, and anyone associated with it. For now, though, the Resistance had a powerful tool at their disposal. As they prepared to leave the dangerous area, Daniel looked out at the glowing star. He thought about Rachel, still trapped in that lab, and all the others suffering under the Council's rule. Aegis was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience. They had been pushed to the brink, but they weren't broken yet. With determination burning in his chest, Daniel vowed to make the Council pay for what they had done. Humanity's fury was growing stronger, and soon, the galaxy would feel its full force. The Council's response to the growing rebellion was swift and merciless. News of successful resistance attacks had spread across human colonies, inspiring more people to rise up. But instead of negotiating or showing restraint, the Council launched a brutal counteroffensive. Entire cities were destroyed, reduced to smoking ruins by orbital bombardments. Millions of humans were displaced, fleeing their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The galaxy watched in horror as the Council's true nature was laid bare for all to see. Amid the chaos, Daniel and his team worked tirelessly to coordinate efforts among the scattered resistance groups. They knew unity was their greatest strength, but organizing so many factions wasn't easy. Some wanted revenge, pushing for reckless assaults that would only lead to more loss of life. Others argued for caution, urging patience while they built up their forces. Daniel tried to strike a balance, reminding everyone that their fight wasn't just about anger, it was about justice. Then came a message that changed everything. It was from Rachel. Daniel almost didn't believe it when her face appeared on the screen, pale and gaunt but alive. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Daniel, if you're seeing this, I'm still alive. But not for long. I'm being held on the Council's Central Command Station, deep in their territory. Please come for me. And bring help. I've learned things here, things that could end this war." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus broke the silence. "That station is the most heavily guarded place in the galaxy. Getting in will be suicide." "I don't care," Daniel said firmly, his eyes locked on the screen where Rachel's image had been moments before. "We're going. If what she says is true, we can't let her stay there." Elena nodded, already pulling up maps of the station. "She's right about one thing. The Central Command holds all their secrets. If we can get inside and retrieve whatever intel she has, we might have a real shot at taking them down. Sophia, still recovering from radiation exposure, offered what support she could. I'll modify Aegis to target specific systems on the station. It won't disable the whole thing. Too risky. But it can create enough confusion to give you a window. With a plan forming, the team prepared for the most dangerous mission yet. They assembled a small strike team, choosing members who were skilled and reliable. Ethan volunteered, eager to prove himself after his earlier betrayal. Though some hesitated to trust him, Daniel decided to give him another chance. As they approached the station, tension filled the air. The massive structure loomed ahead, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a fleet of warships. Using Sophia's modifications, they activated Aegis, sending out a pulse that temporarily disabled key systems. Alarms blared as the station's defenses faltered, creating the opening they needed. The team split into two groups. Marcus led a diversionary attack, drawing guards away from critical areas. Meanwhile, Daniel, Elena, and Ethan slipped through maintenance tunnels, heading straight for the detention level where Rachel was being held. The corridors were dimly lit and eerily quiet, save for the hum of machinery. Every step felt like walking into a trap, but they pressed on. Finally, they reached Rachel's cell. She looked even worse than in the message, her body frail and her eyes hollow. But when she saw Daniel, a flicker of hope returned to her face. "You came," she whispered. "We're getting you out of here," Daniel said, unlocking the door. But their reunion was cut short. Guards arrived, weapons drawn. Outnumbered and outgunned, the team prepared to fight. This time, there would be no retreat. They were too close to turn back now. Humanity's fury burned brighter than ever, and the Council was about to feel its full force. The sound of boots echoed through the corridor as Council enforcers closed in on Daniel, Elena, Ethan, and Rachel. Trapped in the detention level, the group had no choice but to fight their way out. Marcus's diversion had drawn away many guards, but not enough. The odds were against them, but they couldn't afford to give up. Not now. Not when they were so close. Daniel grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, his hand steady despite the chaos around him. "Stay behind me," he told Rachel, who was still weak from her time in captivity. Elena crouched beside him, clutching a small pistol she had brought for emergencies. Ethan, armed with nothing but determination, stood ready to do whatever it took to make amends for his past mistakes. The first wave of guards charged, firing energy blasts that lit up the narrow hallway. Daniel fired back, his aim precise. One by one, the enforcers fell, but more kept coming. The team moved quickly, using every corner and alcove to shield themselves. Elena spotted an emergency access panel on the wall and hurried to open it. "This way," she shouted, pulling the lever. A hidden door slid open, revealing a service tunnel just wide enough for them to squeeze through. They ducked inside, sealing the door behind them. The air was damp and cold, the walls lined with pipes and cables. As they ran, Rachel leaned heavily on Daniel, her legs struggling to keep up. Despite her condition, she managed to speak between labored breaths. "They're planning something big," she said urgently. "A weapon. Something worse than anything they've used before. It targets DNA. Humans won't survive it." Elena's eyes widened. "We need to warn everyone. If we can get this intel to the Resistance, we might be able to stop them." The tunnel twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the station. Along the way, they encountered surveillance drones patrolling the area. Ethan stepped forward, using a small device Sophia had given him to disable the machines before they could alert the guards. "Not bad," Daniel muttered, impressed despite himself. "I'm trying," Ethan replied, his voice tight with emotion. "I owe you all that much." Finally, they reached a junction where the tunnel split into two paths. One led toward the hangar bay, where their escape ship awaited. The other headed deeper into the station, toward the Council's main control room. That's where Rachel said the data about the new weapon was stored. We don't have time for both, Elena said, glancing nervously at the timer on her wrist. Marcus's diversion wouldn't hold forever. Rachel looked at Daniel, her expression pleading. Please, we have to destroy that weapon. If we don't, humanity doesn't stand a chance. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to get his sister to safety. But he knew she was right. Without that weapon, the Council would crush them completely. Ethan, take Rachel to the hangar, he ordered. Get her out of here. Elena and I will handle the control room. No, Rachel protested, grabbing his arm. You can't leave me again. I'm not leaving you, Daniel said firmly. But someone has to finish this. Trust me. Reluctantly, Rachel let go, allowing Ethan to guide her toward the hangar. Daniel and Elena continued down the other path, moving cautiously. The closer they got to the control room, the heavier the security became. Automated turrets lined the walls, and biometric scanners guarded the entrance. Elena knelt by the scanner, pulling out her tools. This will take a minute, she whispered, her fingers flying over the device. As she worked, Daniel kept watch, his heart pounding. He thought about Rachel, about everyone who had suffered under the Council's rule. This wasn't just about saving lives. It was about proving that humanity wouldn't be broken. Finally, the door hissed open. Inside, they found banks of computers displaying streams of data. Elena quickly located the files on the new weapon and copied them onto a secure drive. Then, she set a virus loose in the system, corrupting the Council's plans. We did it, she said, relief washing over her face. But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared, and red lights flashed overhead. Guards were already on their way. Time to go, Daniel said, gripping his weapon tightly. Together, they raced back toward the hangar, knowing they were running out of time. Humanity's fury burned brighter than ever, and the Council was about to learn just how far they were willing to go to protect their future. As Daniel and Elena sprinted back toward the hangar, the station erupted into chaos. The virus Elena had unleashed in the control room began wreaking havoc on the Council's systems. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and entire sections of the station went dark. Guards scrambled to restore order, but confusion spread faster than they could contain it. For the first time, the Council's iron grip on their fortress was slipping. Daniel led the way, his weapon ready as they navigated the twisting corridors. They encountered pockets of resistance along the way, guards trying to block their path, but the disruption caused by the virus gave them an edge. Doors malfunctioned, trapping some enforcers behind sealed bulkheads, while others were too busy dealing with system failures to notice the intruders slipping past. When they finally reached the hangar bay, they found Ethan and Rachel waiting anxiously near their ship. Rachel looked even weaker than before, leaning heavily on Ethan for support. Despite her fragile state, she managed a faint smile when she saw Daniel. "You made it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," Daniel replied, scanning the area. The hangar was still crawling with guards, though fewer than before thanks to Marcus's diversion. Their escape ship sat just a few dozen meters away, its engines humming softly. "We need a distraction," Elena said, her mind racing. "Something big enough to draw them away." Daniel nodded. "I'll handle it. You three get to the ship." Before anyone could argue, he darted out into the open, firing at a nearby console. Sparks flew as the panel exploded, triggering a chain reaction that caused part of the ceiling to collapse. The noise drew the attention of every guard in the vicinity, giving Elena, Rachel, and Ethan the opening they needed. "Go," Daniel shouted, keeping his position as the guards turned their focus on him. Elena hesitated for a moment, torn between staying to help and following orders. But Rachel grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the ship. "He knows what he's doing," Rachel said, though her voice wavered with worry. Inside the ship, Ethan helped Rachel into a seat while Elena took her place at the controls. Outside, Daniel continued his one-man assault, weaving between cover and firing bursts to keep the guards occupied. Just as the enemy numbers began to overwhelm him, The sound of distant explosions echoed through the hangar. Marcus's team had detonated charges on the outer hull, creating another diversion that sent reinforcements rushing to investigate. Seizing the opportunity, Daniel bolted toward the ship. He leaped aboard just as Elena powered up the engines. The ramp closed behind him, and the ship lifted off, narrowly avoiding a barrage of fire from the remaining guards. Once they were safely away, the group gathered in the cockpit, catching their breath. Rachel handed over a data chip containing everything she had learned about the Council's plans. "This is it," she said. "Proof of what they've done, and what they were planning to do next." Elena inserted the chip into the ship's computer, reviewing the files. What she saw filled her with both horror and determination. The Council's new weapon was designed to target human DNA specifically, rendering entire populations sterile, or worse. It was a tool of genocide, meant to erase humanity once and for all. "They won't get away with this," Daniel said, his voice low but fierce. Back at the Resistance base, the team broadcast the evidence across the galaxy. Images of the Council's atrocities, along with Rachel's testimony, reached billions of viewers. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human colonies rose up in unison, joined by sympathetic alien factions who had grown disillusioned with the Council's cruelty. Protests turned into coordinated strikes, crippling the Council's operations. The Council tried to negotiate, offering concessions in exchange for peace, but Daniel refused to back down. Speaking directly to the galaxy, he demanded accountability, not just for humanity, but for every species oppressed by the Council's tyranny. "This isn't just our fight anymore," he declared. "It's everyone's fight. Together, we can build something better." The message resonated far beyond human territories. For the first time, the Council faced a united front, one they couldn't hope to defeat. Humanity's fury had ignited a movement that would change the galaxy forever, and the Council's days of dominance were numbered. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Council, desperate to regain control, launched a massive assault on the Resistance's main base. Dozens of warships descended upon the colony, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. But the Resistance was ready. Armed with Aegis and the intel Rachel had provided, they stood united, prepared to fight for their freedom. Daniel led the charge, his voice steady as he addressed the fighters gathered around him. "This is it," he said. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they're less than worthy. Today, we show them what humanity is made of." The first wave of Council ships opened fire, their beams slicing through the atmosphere. But before the attacks could do serious damage, Sophia activated Aegis. The weapon pulsed with energy, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. One by one, the Council ships faltered, their systems disabled. Pilots scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The Resistance fleet moved in, targeting the crippled vessels while avoiding unnecessary loss of life. On the ground, Marcus and his team engaged Council enforcers who had landed to secure the base. The fighting was intense, with both sides refusing to yield. Marcus fought like a man possessed, his every move fueled by years of anger and frustration. Beside him, recruits who had once been farmers, engineers, and teachers now stood shoulder to shoulder, proving that courage wasn't about training, it was about heart. Meanwhile, Elena coordinated the Resistance's efforts from the command center. Her calm demeanor masked the tension building inside her as she monitored the battle's progress. Every update brought new challenges, but also hope. The tide was turning. For the first time, the Council's forces were retreating, their confidence shattered. In space, Daniel piloted the flagship, leading the charge against the remaining Council ships. His ship darted through the chaos, evading enemy fire while delivering precise strikes. At his side, Rachel watched silently, her frail body strapped into the co-pilot's seat. Though she couldn't fight physically, her presence reminded Daniel why they were there. As the Council's fleet crumbled, their leader, a towering alien known as Overseer Varn, attempted one last gamble. He broadcast a message across all frequencies, pleading for mercy. "We can negotiate," he insisted. "There's no need for further bloodshed." But Daniel wasn't swayed. Speaking directly to Varn, and to the billions watching, he responded firmly. "Your actions have already caused enough bloodshed. You've oppressed us, experimented on us, and tried to erase us. Justice isn't negotiable. Surrender now, or face the consequences." Varn hesitated, then gave the order to stand down. One by one, the remaining council ships powered off their weapons, signaling defeat. Cheers erupted among the resistance fighters as news of the surrender spread. After decades of suffering, humanity had won. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to heal. The council dissolved, its leaders arrested and tried for their crimes. New alliances formed, with humans and aliens working together to rebuild what had been broken. Daniel, Rachel, Alina, Marcus, and Sophia became symbols of hope, their names celebrated as heroes who refused to give up. For Daniel, the victory was bittersweet. He had lost friends, seen horrors no one should endure, but he had also found something greater, a sense of purpose. As he looked out at the stars, he felt a quiet pride. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was strong. And together, they had proven that even the smallest voices could change the course of history. The galaxy entered a new era, one shaped not by fear or tyranny, but by unity and determination. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, and it had changed everything. For the better. The galaxy was different now. The fall of the Galactic Council marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where power wasn't held by a few but shared among many. Daniel and his team had become legends, their story told in whispers and songs across planets and space stations. But for Daniel, the fight wasn't truly over until every human, and every species, was free from the shadow of oppression. Rachel slowly regained her strength, though the scars of her captivity would never fully fade. She spent her days working with Alina to document the Council's crimes, ensuring that no one could ever forget what had happened. Together, they compiled records, testimonies, and evidence into a massive archive called the Truth Project. It wasn't just about exposing the past, it was about building a future where such atrocities could never happen again. Marcus took on a new role as a trainer for the growing coalition of freedom fighters. He taught them not just how to fight, but how to think strategically and act with honor. His gruff exterior softened over time, especially when he saw the determination in the eyes of those who came to learn. "You remind me of us," he told them once, "back when we didn't know if we'd win, but we fought anyway." Sophia, still recovering from her radiation exposure, dedicated herself to improving Aegis. Though the weapon had been instrumental in defeating the Council, she knew it wasn't perfect. With help from engineers across the galaxy, she worked to make it safer and more precise. Her ultimate goal was to create technology that protected instead of destroyed, a tool for peace rather than war. Ethan, once a betrayer, found redemption in service. He volunteered for dangerous missions, often going behind enemy lines to gather intelligence or sabotage remnants of the Council's forces. No one doubted his loyalty anymore. "I've got nothing left to lose," he told Daniel one day, "but I've got everything to give." As for Daniel, he became a voice for unity. He traveled from colony to colony, speaking to crowds about the importance of standing together, not just as humans, but as beings who shared the same stars. His speeches weren't polished or rehearsed. They came from the heart. "We're stronger when we work together," he would say. "Fear divides us. Courage unites us." But even in victory, challenges remained. Some factions within the fallen council refused to surrender, retreating to hidden outposts and plotting revenge. Others exploited the chaos, forming pirate gangs that preyed on vulnerable colonies. The resistance adapted, becoming a force for stability in an uncertain galaxy. One evening, as the team gathered aboard their old ship, they reflected on how far they'd come. The vessel was battered and worn, much like its crew, but it still flew true. Rachel leaned against Daniel, her hand resting on his arm. "Do you think we'll ever stop fighting?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, then at the others. "Maybe not completely," he admitted. "There will always be battles to fight, injustices to correct. But this time, we're not alone. We've got each other, and the whole galaxy backing us up." Elena smiled, raising a glass of water in a quiet toast. "To humanity's fury," she said. "And to its hope," Marcus added, clinking his glass against hers. Outside the ship's window, the stars gleamed brightly, endless and inviting. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt possible. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger. Their fury had ignited a flame that would burn for generations, a light guiding them toward a brighter, fairer future. And so, under that vast expanse of stars, the story continued. Not as an end, but as a beginning, a promise that no matter how dark the night, dawn would always follow.